99% of investments in sports went to the men's game. You would open the sports pages of your local newspaper, you open ESPN, you open People magazine. Women's sports just weren't a part of culture. We believe that we can be the global capital of women's soccer. We are in a market where there is incredible homegrown talent. We have, some of the best global sports sponsors in the world. Our general manager and our coach are building one of the best cultures to work for in sports.
Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Business of Sport.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
We speak to some fantastic owners and founders and athletes. And your involvement across sport is one I'm really, really interested to understand before we actually dive into Gotham itself. Are you able to provide just an overview of your experience within the sports world?
So I guess I'll start probably with my time at Peloton. So I joined, my background's in marketing, and I worked at Pepsi and Digitas, kind of storied brands. And I kind of stumbled into working at Peloton. At the time, it was a little known startup in New York City. We were working out of a WeWork. That was the time of live fitness was really hot at that time in New York. And so you heard about SoulCycle and Flywheel and yoga. And I went and I interviewed with John Foley, the founder and CEO. And he said, I want to build one of the best global brands in the world. We are going to create one of the most important brands in the world. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, we're in a random WeWork. I'm not sure that the heat bill is going to be paid, but sure, let's try. And I think, it was really that vision that excited me. But again, going back to the early days, we were at 33,000 members, I think, 30 some odd employees. Our awareness, we didn't know what our awareness was. That was one of the first things I asked and nobody knew. So we started tracking that. It was, single digits. Like we had this fantastic product. And that's what got me so excited about the opportunity is we had this great product that no one had ever heard of and there was no brand around. So my job, coming in was to really take that great product and go build a brand around it, go build a community around it. That's kind of where I would say my marketing journey started. I then 3 kids later decided to leave Peloton after the IPO and during COVID. And I then started working with my family. So my family has co-owned the New York Giants, the football team, since 1991. And the opportunity there was to work with my family and bring a lot of the expertise, fast forward to the end of Peloton, my journey at Peloton, it was global brand, multiple products. We were ranked one of the best brands in the world. We had gone public, over a million members. And so kind of that story ended well. And the hope was to bring some of that expertise to the Giants. And so I started working with my family and working with the Giants. And it became clear pretty quickly that owners were kind of taking their core asset and saying, how do we get smarter? The business of sports is evolving really, really rapidly. How do we get smarter about the broader world of sports and where sports is going to improve our core asset? And so I went to my family and I said, I don't think of myself as an investor, never sought out to start an investment fund, but as the world of sports is changing, we have 2 options. We can kind of lean back, sit back, watch it grow, hope for the best. Or we can lean in and really help, have a front row seat to where sports is going and even actually help drive some of the innovation in sport. And so with their support, I started Next3, that is the sports investment arm of my family's office that I invest on behalf of my family. And we've been at this about, 2 years. And that is what we're doing. I'm happy to go into more detail if you want.
We have Matt Higgins. I don't know if you're familiar with Matt.
I know Matt, yeah.
So Matt was on the show and we were talking about, basically sports assets, clubs, teams as innovation hubs, the opportunity that they have to, understand technologies, utilize them, test them. Has something like the Giants, has that been incredible for your ability to access some deal flow, get some proper understanding of what works, what doesn't, try out maybe a few businesses in and around the space to then actually build that kind of value further down the line as an investor?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the, when I first came to my family with the idea of Next3, one of the things I had said, I can't guarantee that any of these investments are going to make money, although I hope they do. But what I can guarantee is that we are going to have a front row seat to see how sports is going to evolve. And so we've had the opportunity through a lot of our investments to be able to try out cutting edge technology, and whether it works for us or doesn't work for us, we're learning along the way. And so, at the Giants, for example, we will be launching they have a global markets program. And so we'll be launching for the first time in Germany this season. And so we've talked a lot about when I launched, when I was at Peloton, I was leading marketing when we launched in the UK and Germany. And I know the difficulty of translation and translating all of our marketing, all of our classes. That was, really difficult. Now in a world of AI, there are so many technologies that make that so much simpler. So we at the Giants can be testing out cutting edge technology, in this very specific translation AI service that we probably wouldn't have had access to had we not started Next3.
When we're talking about sports assets in UK and Europe as well, we commonly criticize a lack of understanding and ability to innovate and drive change through the businesses. Fan engagement stale, platform usage is not great, connectivity isn't amazing from, let's say, an on-site experiential all the way down to how you're engaging with your fan base. The NFL is incredible, right, as a product and how it speaks and engages. In what ways were you really looking to elevate that product even further?
Yes, so I would actually point more to my days at Peloton. I think when I joined Peloton, we were in this really interesting phase where, as I said, we had 30 or so thousand members. Those original members were so incredibly loyal. But we knew, so we had to keep them happy and we had to continue to kind of create that community around them. But we also knew that if we were going to be the most important brand in the world, as John cited, we had to grow beyond that core member base. And it was always this kind of delicate dance between how do we keep those core original members happy while growing to something bigger. The NFL or the Giants is almost the opposite of that, where like the core fan base is massive. And you have to absolutely keep those members happy and continue to feed them content and improve the fan experience and do all these things to make those members happy. You also have to think about how do you bring in a new fan base that is younger, more diverse, didn't necessarily grow up on football in the same way that maybe your older fan base did. So there's always this kind of balance of the two. And I would say there's so many lessons I could take from Peloton about how you do balance those two audiences and bring them to a more established audience like the NFL.
And then alongside all of this, since then, you've had your new involvement with Gotham in the NWSL. What was the opportunity there to be a part of that franchise? And more importantly, I think probably the broader league and women's football within the US.
Yeah. So as I said, when we started Next3, we didn't have an agenda. We didn't say, we're starting this because we want to go buy another team or, this is our thesis of where sports is going. It was really, we started out in listening mode. And the idea was, let's just kind of wait and see, where do we see the trends going within the broader sports ecosystem? And it was really clear really quickly within a few months about, where the growth of women's sports was going. And so we kind of double clicked on that and said, okay, there's all these factors that are leading to the growth of women's sports. And then there's also, once you go below that, it's okay, there's this incredible rise in youth participation in soccer, incredible rise in soccer in general in the US. And then you click on, okay, and New York's the number one media market. This opportunity to invest in Gotham became really exciting for us. And so there were three things that we saw that were really interesting to us. Number one, was the lack of media deal. So at the time, now there is a media deal, but the NWSL was on the cusp of a new media deal. And so even if you were kind of back to this idea of like a core original fan base, even if you were a diehard women's soccer fan, it was almost impossible to find the games on TV. So we were never able to bring in that casual, I'm scrolling on a Sunday afternoon and I'm landing on ESPN because I like sports. We were never bringing in that fan because it didn't exist, which is how so many sports suffer, is you just can't find them on TV. You're never going to be able to bring in that audience. So then the second piece was on the investment side. And so at the time, I'm hoping this number has changed, but 99% of investments in sports went to the men's game. So you didn't have to get to 50-50 to imagine a world in which women's sports were going to grow, right? Like imagine that moving to 98%, 97%, like all of a sudden you're starting to see dollars, translate to the women's side. And then the third piece, which actually feels kind of comical in the land of Caitlin Clark to say this because it's changed so much in the past year, but women's sports just weren't a part of culture. You would open the sports pages of your local newspaper, you open ESPN, you open People magazine, kind of classic pieces of culture, and women's sports just weren't a part of it. And so each of those, we looked at each of those pieces and said, like, how hard is it to believe that one of those is going to change or all of them are going to change? And, fast forward to it, it's been less than a year since we've been owners of Gotham, and the league did sign a new media deal. It's 40 times the revenue of the last media deal. And probably more importantly than the 40 times the revenue, although to your point, the national revenue is important. It's all of a sudden you can actually access, we bring in a casual fan. You can be, turning on your TV on a Friday night and stumble onto an NWSL game. That's really new. And that's really important in building the fan base. So then the second one is on the investment side. So that is, still happening and still a lot of opportunity to grow. But I'm sure you've seen, some of the numbers of what the expansion teams are going for, what new teams are, what old teams are selling for and turning over. And so you do start to see investments going into the women's game. And then the third piece, obviously, as you mentioned before with the Caitlin Clark era, is it is a part of culture. You see, there's really interesting data around female athletes and their ability to influence culture actually more even than men's athletes do. And so you see people like, I just read something yesterday about Mary Earps, she was playing for Manchester United and moved to PSG, and her social influence or social engagement is 7 times that of her club. And so all of a sudden, I think the world has woken up to the power of female athletes can have on culture. And that's a real big change as well.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's the power of the athlete in today's society in general. The opportunity for people to be more than their clubs. It's a problem. It's been a real conflict in a way, because it's on one side it's all about the team and the group of people that you play with, but at the same time people follow people these days, not just badges. Right. And being able to play off that and leverage the value of it can benefit the team, even if it does seem like it's, should we say, focused on one star, one icon. Right.
No, it's definitely, we are in an era of like personality driven content. I think, when I think about the balance of that, I go back to my Peloton days where we realized early on that when people, some of our early followers would say, like, I love Peloton, I love Allie Love, or I love Peloton and I love Robin. And we realized that their connection to the brand was through our instructors. And so we could lean into that and help them build their brands while also deliberately connecting it back to the Peloton brand. And that's so much, I think, of the opportunity at Gotham is to say that we do have stars. We have 7 players that are going to the Olympics. Let's lean into that and help Crystal Dunn and Rose Lavelle and Tierna Davidson. Let's go build their brands and also connect it back to Gotham.
How did the opportunity come about? And what I mean by that is, bringing consortiums together, creating multi kind of ownership groups within clubs is something we see more and more of now. How do you begin to participate? Where does the opportunity actually originate from? So once we started,
as I said, we were looking at all these trends and kind of zeroing in on the growth of the NWSL. It was still kind of early days of the NWSL, and there were actually a few different teams we looked at and opportunities. And I went back to my family and I shared this potential opportunity. And we had this conversation around when my grandfather came into the New York Giants. He had an opportunity actually to buy a full 100% of other teams in other markets. And he was, poor kid from Brooklyn who lifelong dream was to become an owner of the Giants. And he said, I'd rather have 50% of the New York Giants than 100% of, fill in the blank other market that I won't say. And so we looked at this opportunity with Gotham as well. The team, it was a more complicated deal, but we were incredibly excited by both the other owners we could partner with and also the opportunity to go build this global brand based here in New York.
So if I'm right, your position currently is governor of Gotham FC?
Yes. So I led this investment on behalf of my family. So there's actually, I lead it. There's 9 cousins of mine. We're all investors. And so as the governor, I sit on the NWSL league board and on the executive committee as well and lead the day-to-day of the club.
What's that actually like when you're on the board of the league with the interests of the club obviously at heart? How does that relationship work at the moment? Is it a very good relationship between NWSL top and the franchises underneath?
Yeah, I don't think I appreciated, everyone had told me that this was a more than full-time job coming in. I don't think I really appreciated, like, the team was a full-time job, the league was a full-time job. Then there's the other parts of Next 3 that are full-time jobs. And so it's a lot, definitely. I would say, a few things I would say. One is, what's been really interesting to me is I've had this conversation with a bunch of the other new owners. There's a lot of new owners in the league. And there's this sort of theme I've realized that most other owners will say this is the smallest investment that they've made out of their fund or out of their family office, but the one that they spend the most time on. And I would say probably the same for me. And I think I've thought about this a lot. And I think there's this sort of collective feeling among owners that we all believe in what this can be. We all see the potential of where the NWSL can go. And that if there is a women's league that is going to, be a part of the conversation and compete with the growth of the men's leagues, it is going to be the NWSL. But that's not going to happen by us leaning back and kind of hoping for the best. It is going to require our collective efforts and all of us leaning in and bringing our expertise to make it happen. So as part of that, there is this really, symbiotic relationship between the league and the teams, because I think at a certain point in a league's maturation cycle, teams are kind of head-to-head competition, like, the Giants want to win and we want, XYZ team to lose. Obviously, there is still the on-field competition and we all want that. But we also all recognize that the league's growth will hinge on its weakest links, and the weakest teams matter as much as the strongest teams, because we all need to grow our attendance. We all need to grow our fan bases for this to be successful.
I'm really interested because it's, the reporting recently on something like Angel City, right? And now, as you said earlier, and you referenced the valuations in and around the franchises as well. It's the first time we're seeing exit opportunities early on, and the franchises going for really significant money within a sporting context. What do you think is driving those kind of valuations? Is it actually revenue? Are the revenues really strong, and therefore it's a fair reflection of the business, or is a lot of it based on that potential scarcity community value that is being seen now, and they're still thinking that these franchises have such a long way to go, even beyond, let's say, a 250 million valuation that's being reported for an Angel City?
Yeah, so I definitely can't speak to how others are thinking about it. I can share how we thought about the investment, and that's as an investment. I think I go back to when my grandfather, had the opportunity to come into the Giants. This was a hobby for him, and he was, incredibly successful businessman who late in life said, this is, if I could take my, poor kid from Brooklyn roots and be able to buy something like the New York Giants, like a piece of the New York Giants, like that is a lifelong dream. And he spent $75 million and the world laughed at him. It was before social media, thank God, because the more of the world would have been laughing at him. Like, people thought he was crazy because people didn't think, to your point earlier, of sports as an investment class at that point. Now, obviously, the NFL has proven to be an incredible investment. However, I would say, when we thought about Gotham, we thought about this as an investment. And yes, we hope that, it is our hope that the world is a better place when women's sports are treated as men's sports are. And nothing makes me prouder to see my sons walking around in their Gotham jerseys, because they look up to Rose and Lynn and Midge as much as they look up to, Daniel Jones and Kayvon Thibodeau. However, we came in, we did, months of diligence. We treated it as any other investment we would make would be. We spent, months with the team, months with the league, looked at all the risks, tried to understand what the capital costs would be. And we said, this is an investment that's going to take a long time to play out because the league is not profitable right now, but we are in this for the long run, and we see this as an investment. We
just the other day did a brilliant show with Brett Johnson, who owns Phoenix Rising and has set up Rhode Island. And now Ipswich as well in the English Premier League, which is incredible. And he said something really interesting, particularly with Rhode Island, but he said it applied, throughout most of his investments, and it was location, location, location. How important is that New York location to Gotham and your ability to really build an incredible kind of transformational sports brand?
We believe that we can be the global capital of women's soccer. And that's not just a grand vision. Like when you go into the reality of what that means, we are in a market where there's incredible homegrown talent. So we have a great youth system in New York, New Jersey. So we have great players, kind of coming up in their career. We are a global media market. So we can attract global international talent to come to New York. They want to play here. We have, some of the best global sports sponsors in the world are in our backyard. And this is sort of less than New York, more about the culture we're building. But we believe, I strongly believe in our general manager and our coach are building one of the best cultures to work for in sports. And they're really deliberate about, our general manager often talks about a player NPS. So, the world of tech. So often in tech, you look at net promoter score. So would you recommend this product? And so a product like Apple or a product like Peloton, we're always striving for a high NPS score. Yael is thinking about do players want to play here, and will they, on their way in or on their way out, recommend this club to their peers? And it's not perfect, and that we have a lot to improve, but over and over, we hear that players are recommending it as a place to play, because it's not just a place where, we have a great product on the field, but it's a place where they can continue to improve and they can continue to get better. And that's what the top talent wants to do.
We can't just talk about business. Well, how's it going on the pitch? What was it like? Because you're current reigning champions. Am I correct?
We are. So it's funny, deals take a long time. And so when we started the conversations with Gotham, they were in last place, and we're like, all right, well, you got to start somewhere. And then the summer kept going and deal was taking longer than we thought. And all of a sudden we're kind of, nearing October, and we're like, wow, we're sitting right at the cusp of potentially making the playoffs. And me and my family and a bunch of people that work for me, we've been going to the games just kind of quietly as fans. No one knew who we were because we hadn't closed yet. We were at the game where it was on decision day that they actually eked into the playoffs in the last spot, sixth spot. And again, we hadn't closed the deal yet. So we're like, okay, this is exciting. And then fast forward, we end up closing the deal 2 days before the championship. We literally send, they're calling me as I'm getting on the plane, wiring the money. I'm like, okay. And we land in San Diego. I meet many of the players I hadn't met yet, introduce myself. We then turn around. The team wins the championship 2 days later. We're all celebrating. We're like, oh my God, how did we get here? We literally in 72 hours went from being, not involved in the team to winning the championship. So obviously came in at the top, which has been great, but I would say it is still we're a startup, and, startups sometimes look really glamorous, and, sometimes you're winning a championship, and sometimes you're figuring out why the food is so bad. One of the things we heard from players, so I'm a big fan of open lines of communication and transparency and, an open door policy. So I called all the players when, after we won the championship, just said, here's my cell phone number. When you have feedback, tell me, because the only thing I think I know what needs to be improved, but the only thing I can really do is listen to your feedback and see what we can do. And so one of the complaints we had heard over and over last year was just the quality of the food. And so we brought in a chef who is now, Tony, his name is, and most people call him our best off-season acquisition, because the food is amazing and the players are so happy about it. It doesn't mean they don't have, new things that they'd like us to adjust, but it's always a process. And we have to be listening to our players and figuring out how we can improve.
So you have a great relationship then between the business, should we say the executive side, and the performance side?
Yeah. I would point to good startups. You almost don't even think of them as, obviously there's, the people running the business and the people running the soccer, but they are they need to be tied at the hip. But there's this inherent understanding on the soccer side that the number one goal on the soccer side is to win and the product on the field. And we have to put that first. Number two is to drive the business, because by driving the business, we are able to then go back and invest on the soccer side. And I think, sometimes in bigger businesses that it gets a little separated because it feels a little more theoretical, but it's very real for us, in a startup mode, that we have to, maybe I'll go to use an example of the fan experience. So we, came in and said, kind of taking a page of the Peloton playbook. We have a great product that we need to now go create an end-to-end consumer experience around it so that people not just show up for the first time, but then they have a great time and they tell their friends and they come back. Having a great fan experience may sound like that's squarely a business side, task. However, the players are every one of the players has commented to me about how much better the playing experience is because we are filling the stadium in a way that we haven't in the past. And so there's this really close tie between like what's good for the soccer side and what's good for the business side, and that they're so inherently linked.
What is it like, within the kind of Gotham FC setup as well? What's that like? You talk about the importance of experiential, being able to create a fan base from scratch, speaking to them in a different way, giving them the best experience. How do you go about that?
We're an interesting place because I keep referring to us as a startup, and in many ways we are, but in other ways we had a core fan base before we came in as new owners, and it's really important to me that we continue to serve that fan base and make them feel a part of the growth of this club as they are the original fans well before we were here. And so early on in our ownership, we hosted our independent supporter group is called Cloud9, and so we hosted the leadership of Cloud9, brought them to our office and said, let me walk you through our vision. And also, please walk us through your vision and tell us, what does it mean to be a part of Cloud9? What makes you fly on your own dime to San Diego to watch the championship game? I mean, these are people that are so incredibly loyal to our club. And so it's really important to me as we grow to continue to prioritize what's right for our original fans as well. That being said, to your point on, how do you grow a fan base? So we, again, kind of looked inside and outside of sport to say, like, what is the best of sports? And actually what is the best of a great fan experience? And so we hired the person who's running our brand and our fan experience right now is someone who used to work with me at Peloton, who in our first, I introduced her to someone else that works in sports, and they called me after and they were like, Laura seems nice, but I just want you to know she doesn't know sports. And I was like, no, I'm aware. I worked with her for 4 years. That is exactly why I hired her, because she didn't come in for a love of the sport. She came in because she knows what a fun 25-year-old wants to do on a weekend. And so she flew to the Angel City games. She talked to the Savannah Banana people who I think do a great job. She talked to minor league baseball teams. We looked at Disney. We looked inside and outside of sport to say what makes people not just show up for the game, but have a great experience and want to come back. And that's what we've brought to Gotham. And so I talked, I think before about, creating this great fan experience. We created a fan fest so that we took 90 minutes of soccer, which is what people came to before, and extended it to, 3 hours of your Saturday or Sunday. So there's live music and there's face painting and food trucks and games, and tried to make it, a bigger fan experience so that it's not just, we have to get the product on the field right, but then it's also expanding beyond that.
What's your current customer profile? What's the most kind of consistent fan that you're seeing at Gotham games interacting maybe in the media side as well?
So what's interesting is we have, I would say, first of all, we need more research on this, but I would say that the kind of two types of fans we see right now is we have what I think people think of as a classic women's soccer of young families coming with their kids, they're bringing their soccer games, and the kind of classic players as role models type market. And we absolutely have that. I think one of the things that's been really important to us is that there's so few opportunities to bring a family, to do something with your family on the weekend that's affordable, fun for everyone. And so we absolutely serve that market. We interestingly also have a young, diverse fan base that is coming from New York City. They're coming from Brooklyn, and they just are looking for a great entertaining thing to do on a weekend. And so it's really important to us that we're kind of straddling the line between both of those consumers.
Do you get really focused on who that fan is? Because I guess it's quite hard, as you said, you don't want to alienate people, but you want to speak to younger audiences, but you want to create something that's fit for purpose across lots of different levels.
Well, so I would say in general, the way that we think about this is we kind of keep coming back to our North Star of creating a great fan experience. And so we talked about NPS before. So we measure NPS after every game. We ask every person, was this a great experience? What would you improve? What could be better? And then all of us, from myself down, all read all of the open comments. So there's the kind of data you get, and our NPS has been in the high 80s, low 90s, which is absolutely incredible. It's a score from 100 to negative 100. So there are teams out there that are having what they think is a productive fan experience, and they're literally in the negative ones. And then ours is high 80s, low 90s. So we're really focused on always responding to feedback. But then there's also the open part of the survey where you can just write in your comments. And so I read all the comments, and we get hundreds of comments after every game. Everyone on my team reads all the comments, because the only way we know how we're going to get better is to continually listen to our fans and understand ways we can improve the experience.
We mentioned, tied into that, we mentioned the importance of media rights when it comes down to revenues and business. How important is ticketing and hospitality been to driving the business side of the club? Absolutely
critical. We think about ticketing potentially differently than maybe some of the more mature teams and leagues that you've spoken to. So we're not focused on average ticket price. We're really focusing on volume. We want to fill that stadium as much as we can. And the reason we want to do that is because, again, we believe that we have an incredible product, and that once you show up once, you're going to come back and you're going to tell your friends about it. And so we're really focused on, again, getting you in the door, no matter what that looks like, and then trying to get you, to come back for your second time, your third time, your fourth time. So we're really focused on that.
So does that mean you bring the price down of the average ticket and try and get people through the door?
We do dynamic pricing, which I'm sure many other teams do as well. So it depends. I would say it's not just about what the average price is, but do we have, or is our higher priced or our, more premium options priced accurately to capture, the high end demand? But importantly, to your point, do we have the lower price options so that a family it's still an affordable thing to do? And so we're, again, less focused on what the average ticket price is and more about getting people in the stadium to experience it, so that, we can continue to grow what our core in-person experience is, and then our broader brand. We've thought a lot about sports in the global landscape. Sports have kind of gone from this very live, in-person, local opportunity where, your fan base is set by the market that you're in. So like a Kansas City or a Green Bay can never be as big of a fan base as New York, because of, you're kind of defined by your market. Now we're in a world where fan bases are digital and global. And so you very much can live in, a rural town in the UK and be a fan of Green Bay because you've watched them on TV, you follow players on social media. And so as much as we're focused on, improving the in-game experience, we also have an eye towards what does a global digital fan look like, and how do we engage with our fans outside of the core stadium experience?
Kind of as an extension of that, what have you seen with sponsorships and the appetite of brands to engage with Gotham and create really meaningful partnerships? How's that been?
So sponsorship is interesting. I think brands, I would say in general in women's sports, I think you see a real divide between, for lack of a better term, like brands that get it and brands that don't. And we certainly see there's certain brands that we work with that really understand that, they're getting in, that there's incredible value creation opportunities for them because they're getting in early, and that they're going to have an outsized influence on where the brand as Gotham is going, and that they can really be a part of that. And so we see things like CarMax, for example, who's our front of kit jersey sponsor. They had upgraded. They were on our sleeve. They upgraded to the front because they were able to point to our fans our fans had an outsized loyalty to CarMax because of their relationship with Gotham. And you see that Ally, when you think about women's sports, you think about Ally. They have a partnership with the league, and they have really aligned themselves with the growth of women's sports. I would say there's another bucket of brands we talk to that are kind of still thinking about sponsorship in a very traditional, how many eyeballs am I getting? Oh, wait, you don't, when I look at your viewership numbers versus, NFL viewership numbers, like I'm going to go for the NFL because that math looks better. And so when we often, and actually we've turned down more sponsors than we've accepted this year, we are in the business of like setting what our value is. And certain brands don't understand that today. And that's okay. And we're not going to change the value of our brand for that. We're going to work with the brands like CarMax that really get that.
Is it, do you notice a difference between brands that will engage with the giants and brands that will be engaging with Gotham?
I guess I would go back to this idea that the brands that work with Gotham understand, they're looking for something different. They're not necessarily just looking for eyeballs and like a media value. They are looking for the outsized impact that their association with Gotham has on their brand. So we see in women's sports in general, and specifically with Gotham, that our fans are more loyal to the brands that we work with than in a traditional sponsorship setting. So the brands that we work with really understand that versus looking for what I would consider like a more traditional sponsorship.
Do you feel when you've got a new team, or a newer franchise, your stance there of not just taking what's on the table, but actually being very true to your values is pretty much the most important thing you do, because it sets the precedent for what you're able to deliver down the line?
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about that often internally of, if we're going to put a brand on our jersey, they might as well be a part of our own brand. Like we are putting out in the market, whether we're saying it explicitly or implicitly, that we are aligned with those brands' values. And so the flip side of that is that we need to set what our brand values are and look for brands that want to align with that. And that, misfit between, if a brand is trying to align with us for reasons that don't really align with our values, that's going to come out really quickly in the conversations, and then it's just not the right fit.
This is slightly broader, but we've seen such a spike in interest in football in the US on an MLS side over the last year or so because of Messi's involvement. Unprecedented deals with something like an Apple coming in and having a percentage of a rights deal as an individual rather than a team. But, a conversation we have regularly is it sustainable? Does this last when people like, Messi leave and then the league, suddenly maybe reduces again in its exposure? Football in the US for women has always been, from my view and from our view, incredibly well established. Your participation has seemed amazing. You've won multiple World Cups. The standing from women and men's is very different based on the success, but also I think within the population. How important has that been in establishing the sport domestically, but then also, I guess, trying to build a product globally and maybe having to just shift and speak about it in a slightly different way? You're
right that the national team in the US, the women's national team, has always been pretty popular here. You look at their success over, past Olympics and World Cups, and you see that hasn't necessarily always translated to the club level. And so, I think it's kind of back to the conversation around like individual stars. So you see someone like Alex Morgan having this incredible following. I don't know how many people, 5 years ago could have pointed to what team she played for. And so I think that's where the opportunity for us and, places like Gotham is obviously to celebrate our Olympians and celebrate our players going to the World Cup and continue to grow that national awareness of the national team. However, we also need to figure out how to translate that back to the club level. And I think it goes back to the Peloton parallel of like, do you know who Ali Lev is? And do you know that Ali Lev is a Peloton instructor? So for us, like, again, we have 7 players going to play for the Olympics this summer. We're tied with Orlando for the most of any NWSL club. It is the duty of Gotham and the entire league to make sure that everyone, that is excited about the Olympics this summer is also coming back from the Olympics and saying, okay, now I want to go watch those 7 players when they come back and play for Gotham.
What do you think the league does really well, and what do you think it could maybe get better at? Where's there room for improvement?
I would say, the league has had a lot of different iterations. It's 11 years old. It's kind of had its ups and downs. Jessica Berman, our current commissioner, has done an incredible job of kind of being really focused on upgrading the talent, I would say, across the board. And so that starts with turning over a lot of the ownership groups. So we've talked about, the ability to bring in owners across that are, the Ricketts family who own an MLB team, the new family in Portland who are part of it, NBA owners, multiple owners of NFL teams. So you're seeing kind of an upgrade at the ownership level, kind of number one, and a commitment in those owners to invest in the league and invest in kind of for the long term. I would say that, the second kind of upgrade of talent is within the league and, upgrading the talent within the league office and putting processes and systems in place so that we are treated like one of the global, it's sort of like raising the bar across everything about what a global, brand and league should be. So they're sort of within the league. And then the third piece is this kind of laser focused on, we want to be the league where the best international talent comes to. And so we are always talking about, at the league level of how many of the best players in the world play in the NWSL.
How's it been, do you think, in attracting that talent from outside of the US? Is that now a key focus to internationalize it as well as you say, create the domestic value? What's that sell like? What's that appetite like?
Yeah. So when I have conversations with our general manager and coach about, how do we become, again, the global destination for women's soccer, I think we do go back to this conversation around what the culture we're building is. And so for players that want to continue to get better, that want to play with the best, that want to play with the best coaches, Gotham is the global destination to do that. And so we're really focused on, we can't always compete on some of the other areas that other teams may, but what we can compete on is the culture we're creating and bringing in the best level of talent from a coaching and staffing perspective to support that.
You said something earlier, which is so true, which is almost, we need everyone to be of a certain level and we want the league to be really, of top quality across the board. You'll have some that maybe perform better, some that can generate more money, some that have stronger fan bases. What do you do to ensure that all of those teams are capable of performing at a level which keeps the league at the top of competition?
So there's been this really interesting dynamic since we've joined the league where there's this genuine kind of openness to open your book of best practices and share it across the league. I saw that when I came in November and, owners were pulling me aside and saying, what can I help you with? Is it about improving your, people heard me talking about the fan experience. So I flew my team out to watch an Angel City game. We talked about, dynamic pricing. So should we be talking to, Kansas City or San Diego about how they do their pricing? And since, now all of a sudden I'm on the older end of owners, since there's so many new owners that have come in. And I've had the same conversation with the owners in Portland and San Diego and Seattle that have all come in and said, let us help you, because there's this implicit and explicit understanding that this league is going to grow. If we go, Gotham goes and plays a game in Portland that they sell out of, that's great for the league. That's great for us. That's great for them. And so there's this kind of shared understanding of maybe at one day we won't feel that way anymore, but right now we are all going to grow this league together. And that means everyone kind of being on the same page about how we can help each other.
We've talked a lot about the business, but sports is so personal as well. And it's motive. What excites you the most about the opportunity, about the team?
What I thought you were going to ask me is tell me about your soccer playing days, which whenever someone asks me that, I'm like, no, I didn't play soccer. I played field hockey, just here to enjoy. So I would say, well, maybe to answer a few different ways. I would say, personally, well, I'll start with the business side. I think on the business side, what excites me is really feeling like this is something that I can personally help grow. And as much as we've talked about it as a business today, it's naive to say that it's not something bigger than that. It is something bigger than that. And to be able to, I think this was, well before my time, but when you look back at kind of the founding fathers, and they were fathers, of the NFL, there were sort of moments you could point to say wow, we made that decision. And that's why the NFL is where it is. When we look back, 30 years from now at the NWSL, we will point to decisions we are making today that are fundamentally the reason that the league has gotten to where hopefully we all believe it can go. And so the opportunity to help build not only one of the best global sports franchises in the world and hopefully the first women's global sports franchise, a multi-billion-dollar global sports franchise, but also the league. And really, when we look back in 30 years and say of course the NWSL is one of the best leagues in the world. And of course people are walking down the street and, name your favorite global city wearing a Gotham hat. We will point back to these decisions that we've made. And so I would say that's what drives me overall. And then, kind of on a personal level, I see it with my own kids. And when I think about my childhood going to Giants games with my grandfather, and my grandparents, I actually wrote my college application essay about 3 generations of women bonding over Giants games in the NFL, and kind of through the thread of, women in the NFL. And now I think about that with my kids are having a similar experience where they go to Gotham games and Giants games with my mom, their grandmother, and me and their cousins and, their generation. And they think about it in the same way. And they don't, to raise a generation that doesn't think about women's sports as sort of oh, that's nice. We should also support the women, that they truly see the NFL and the NWSL on a level playing field, because they don't see it. Like, that's how it's treated in our house, and that's how they see it in the rest of the world, or that's how they are projecting it out into the rest of the world. That's really what motivates me as well.
It's such an interesting space. And I think, watching the growth of it has been incredible, seeing the attention, the attraction of everything. And also, as you said, the experiential, which just by the looks of it is driving such incredible opportunity for people is amazing. So I'm so grateful to have you come on and talk to us about it, because it's been so interesting to hear everything that you're doing, but also just kind of winning the league. And I'm really, really excited to watch it all continue to boom, hopefully.
Yes, I hope so. And you'll have to come to New York and come to a Gotham game.